Rudcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Rudcast, where we talk about books, things you ask me, and things that come up when I'm about to burp. Today, we have a question from one of my subscribers named Yossi. So, Yossi asks, since my preference, at least for now, is to find a, quote, traditional publisher, how do I narrow down my initial search for a potential publisher that might give me a fair shake to make my pitch? Can I try and interest more than one publisher at the same time? Then he goes on to ask, indeed, how early or late into the project do I start to launch my inquiry? So if you've followed my work for any bit of time, you know that I have a bit of a vendetta against traditional publishers. That said, while I do think that 99% of people should not bother with a traditional publisher, some of you are just going to want to do it anyway, and that's your decision. So I'm just going to give you some advice if this is a route that you really, really do want to pursue. First of all, know what you mean when you say a traditional publisher. Traditional publisher typically means the big 4 to 5 publishers, because the only real benefit you get from a traditional publisher is their experience, getting a really experienced editor, cover designer, things like that, and the name recognition, which truthfully doesn't give you much in the marketplace, but it does give you a bit of street cred for mainstream media and things like that. If you can say I was published by Penguin Random House, which, by the way, I believe they merged recently, so that's just going to make things more difficult for authors, but that's another story. So how early do you start the search? Yesterday. This process takes months and months and months, if not years, and you want to start as soon as possible, because first you're going to need to entice an agent, and then that agent is going to need to pitch you to the publisher. So you need to work on your book proposal yesterday. Now, what do I mean by a book proposal? People have this false idea, and it's not their fault. This is what mainstream narrative tells you, that a book proposal is, here's why my idea is so great. That's not what a book proposal is. A book proposal is a business plan. Most publishers will actually have you include a marketing plan in your proposal, which kind of surprises people because we're all under this impression that getting a publisher means they market the book for you. It is not true. What publishers do, what traditional publishers do in general, is they know how to throw gasoline on a fire that you've already started. So if you want to know what to do to attract a publisher, you need to start that fire yourself. So the easiest way to get published is to come to a publisher and say, I have 10, 20, 30,000 people lined up to buy my book. And that's the low end. If you want to really, really guarantee a good deal, I would say here is my plan to reach 100,000 people. If you don't have an email list of, let's say, a minimum of 25,000 people, publishers are not going to take you seriously. And those numbers should be even higher if we're talking about Facebook or Twitter. You're going to want to have 50,000 plus followers for them to even take you seriously. So hopefully you're starting to see why I'm so anti-publisher. But again, this is your choice. So I want to be a little more specific with my advice to Yossi here. I apologize for going on a bit of a rant, but I have just seen so many people waste months and years of their life begging agents to give them a chance, begging publishers to give them a chance when their ideas are truly good, but they just don't have that audience to entice a publisher. And then I would argue that once you do have that audience, you really don't need the publisher. But again, that's a story for another day. So how early should you be doing this? Yesterday. Before you finish the book, before you're 100% clear on what the book is, you should do it immediately, and you should be pitching constantly. You should be sending inquiries every single day. You should be working on your book proposal every day. And if you really want to guarantee success, I would hire someone to write your book proposal, someone who has insider knowledge of publishing, someone who really understands the business aspect of publishing. How do you narrow down which publisher to pitch? You talk to an agent. You let an agent do that work, because almost all publishers will not take unsolicited proposals. And the ones that will, 99 times out of 100, are not worth your time. They're low-level publishers that you could call them vanity publishers. And essentially what a vanity publisher is they either charge you money and still take a similar amount of royalties as a big publisher, or maybe they don't charge you money, but they'll give you something like $1,000 advance in exchange for 60, 70, 80% of your royalties. They're pretty much screwing you over. I would not recommend using a vanity publisher. If you're going to pay money, pay a coach, pay someone like me. It doesn't have to be me. I'm not the only one that does this, but pay someone who has the business knowledge to help you reach that audience that the publisher wants to see. Next question, can I try and interest more than one publisher at the same time? Absolutely. But you want to interest as many agents as possible, then get one agent and let them do the heavy lifting for you. Again, start as early as possible. Don't wait until you're done with the first draft. Most publishers will not want to see an entire draft, especially for a nonfiction book. For fiction, they most likely will want to see the entire thing. You may have a little bit better luck if you're writing fiction, but most people listening to this are not. When I say better luck, I don't mean that it's easier. I mean that fiction publishers are a little more open to hearing out people who don't have a big audience. Nonfiction, much, much less so. And then he asks about translations. I'm writing the manuscript in English, but I would love to translate it once it is done. How do I find a publisher for that translation? Again, I would encourage you to do this independently, but if you want a publisher, the publisher will take care of this, or your agent will take care of this, or depending on the agent, they may introduce you to another agent who handles foreign rights translations. Again, this is something you can do on your own. You can get it independently translated, or I actually believe Yossi said that he is capable of translating in a couple of languages, so just go ahead and do it. This is something you can do once the book is done, but if you want to take the traditional route, then it's going to be an agent who takes care of it for you. So let them do what they're good at. Focus on making the book as good as possible. If there's enough demand for your book, people will come to you. One of my favorite stories is The Martian. Many of you may know the book. Many of you may know the movie with Matt Damon. That book was self-published originally. It was actually not self-published originally. It was self-published as a series of blog posts on the author's website and basically built this cult following, which he then decided to self-publish because there was such a demand for it. People were saying, I know I can get this stuff for free, but I just want you to put it together in a book, and I want to hold it in my hands, and I want to buy it, and I want to pay you money because I love it. And the self-published book, despite it being publicly available for free, blew up. And once it blew up, publishers came to Andy. They took his book, they threw gasoline on the fire. As I mentioned, they threw a bunch of money on this proven idea. Again, if your idea is proven, they will throw money on it. If it's not proven, they will not. They turned this self-started fire into an absolute crazy, crazy, crazy forest fire. And it turned into a movie. Then Hollywood came calling. And this is how it works if your book is successful enough. And this really just comes down to the general principle of what publishers are. Publishers are investors, and they're very old-fashioned, risk-averse investors, which in many industries isn't necessarily a bad thing. But the publishing world has changed a lot over the past 10, 15, 20 years, even the past 3 or 4 years. In the past, you had to be in a bookstore for people to discover you. And the only people who had relationships with bookstores are traditional big publishers. So you needed them. It was also very expensive to print books. You had to print thousands at a time. So you had to know that there was enough demand for it. The publisher's role was to take that risk off your plate, because as an ordinary person, you're not going to finance many thousands of dollars to print books that might not sell. Given the advent of print on demand, which if some of you don't know it, it's that companies like Amazon, Ingram Spark, and all of these publishing services companies can print books so quickly and cheaply that if you order it on your phone in Timbuktu right now, Amazon can print your book in minutes. So they don't need to store thousands of books in a warehouse, because they can just wait until someone buys it and then print it. So there's no risk involved for you to self-publish. But I don't want to make this about my rant on why I think self-publishing is better. And to be clear, I'm saying professional self-publishing, not the amateur self-publishing that most people do. Because regardless of what you want to do, if you want to use a huge publisher, a small publisher, if you want to create your own publishing in print, if you want to start a blog, if you want to get any of your ideas or stories out in the world, it doesn't matter what your eventual plan is. No matter what you want to do, you need to put your ideas out in public now. You need to do it yesterday, and you need to start building an audience. This is what I teach people who are in my coaching program. This is what a traditional publisher is going to tell you to do. This is what a vanity publisher is going to tell you what to do. This is what experts on YouTube would tell you to do. This is what podcasters will tell you to do. This is what radio hosts will tell you to do. It doesn't matter if you're in the traditional world, if you're in more of the entrepreneurial world, if you're a fiction writer, if you write children's books. None of this matters. Even if you're just trying to start a business, what you need to do is put your ideas out into the market as quickly as possible, iterate based on what the market thinks, and retain people's attention. You need to build an audience of your own. No matter what your strategy is, the thing that you need to have success in 2020 and beyond is an audience. So start sharing your ideas. Start building an audience. You don't have to give away everything that's going to be in your book. You don't have to give away all your secret sauce, but you need to give away attractive hooks, attractive stories, interesting ideas, polarizing ideas, surprising ideas. You need to build a tribe that rallies around what you want them to rally around. So that can be your why, that can be a manifesto, that can be your stories, that can be the certain tone of yours, that can be a religion, that can be an anti-religion, that can be a profession, it can be a tone of voice. You can rally people around absurdity, around seriousness, around intellect. It doesn't matter. You just need to put ideas out there. So again, if you want a traditional publisher, build an audience. If you want to self-publish, build an audience. If you want to build an audience, start sharing your ideas. As Seth Godin, one of my favorite marketing gurus, would say, find the people who say, people like us do things like this. Find the people like you and be the hub for those people. Start sharing your ideas and you'll get published, or you can do it yourself. And I do want to thank you, Yossi, for this thoughtful question. I apologize if I went on a bit of a rant on telling you to do things differently, but I just don't like seeing people spend months and months and years doing this. But if you know what you're getting into, that is totally your call. And I wish you the absolute best. For everyone else, I just want to give you a couple of quick warnings in addition to everything I've mentioned. If you do decide to go through a traditional publisher, your book is most likely going to take 2 to 3 years once you get a publishing deal, and it will likely take you a minimum of 6 months once you've built your audience to get that deal. So if you have a huge audience right now, you can expect your book to be out in 2.5 years or so. If you don't have an audience, if you know what you're doing, you can build an audience in 6 months to a year and then another 2.5 years to get published. On a rare occasion, a publisher might be able to get things published as quickly as a year. If your idea is pretty straightforward, that's possible. And in many instances, it could take as long as 3 or 4 years. Whereas if you self-publish, even the most complicated books typically won't take longer than a year. And many of my clients who I work with who do straightforward informational books can publish as quickly as 2 to 3, maybe 4 months. I would say on average, the people I work with take 3 to 6 months. You will also have to give up final creative control on your product. So whatever the publisher wants, the publisher gets in the end. You can fight them, but they will win. That includes the title, that includes the cover, that includes editing decisions, that includes positioning, that includes anything funny, quirky, different you want to include in the book. That includes if you want to promote yourself or a business or a cause, because the publisher will not profit on that, so they will not care about it. And that's mainly it, besides the fact that they will take 80 to 90% of your royalties in exchange for an advance. You will get an advance that you do have to pay back with book sales, but if you have a huge audience, it's possible you can get a 6-figure advance. If you have a massive audience, you could maybe even approach 7 figures. That's really the one upside. So if you do have a huge audience and you need the money, it's definitely worth considering. I think you could probably pre-sell your book and make that back in other ways, but I just want you to have an idea of the whole picture. I'll stop my rant for now, but just know what you're getting into. That is all for today. If you do want help with this sort of thing, I do offer a one-on-one coaching program as of today, which is almost the end of this crazy year 2020. In 2021, I will very likely be moving to a group coaching program very, very early in the year, which I think will be equally as valuable, but you will get a little less personalized advice. So I encourage you, whether you're listening to this at the end of 2020 or sometime in the future, tell me what stocks to buy. Either way, I encourage you to apply for the program. We can just have a casual chat and see if it's a good fit for you. So if you're interested at all, it's a no pressure application and conversation. Just go to platypusbooks.com and click on apply to get published. And that is all. Have a wonderful holiday season and New Year if you're listening to this then. And again, if you're listening to this in the future, please send me an email and tell me who wins the Super Bowl and which stocks I should buy. Take care, everyone.